Hello, everyone, and welcome to Doing Business in Bentonville. My name is Andy Wilson. I'm the Executive Director. Oh, wow. We've got a great podcast for you today, and let me just get straight to it with my friend Bill Senn. Bill, welcome.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate
it is
you.
so
glad to be here.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. Well, Bill and I, we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, we just met, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. We just had the opportunity to meet recently, but Bill's got a great career. We're going to talk about that today. Our topic today is supply chain, but what Bill's expertise he's going to bring to us is what we're going to call the middle mile, right, Bill?
That's right.
And we're going to get to that. But Bill, before we do, though, I want our guests to get to know you a bit. And again, welcome to the podcast. It's so great to have you. And so why don't you just begin and tell us a little bit about you, who you are, and then we'll talk about what you're currently doing and just jump straight into our content today.
Fantastic. Well, Andy, I think the most important thing I am is a student of retail. Besides being a family person and a husband of 30 plus years and a grandfather, who are just the joy of my life, those grandkids. But since I came out of college, I had the blessing to work with Mr. Walton. I always tell people I am just a simple guy from South Florida and came into being on a roll to work for Sam's Club in 1989. And we opened a good Sam's Club down in Lantana, Florida. It was very successful. Bob Chain was there. We had a couple of executives fly in. And they said, "Hey, Sen, you like doing this. Would you like to do some more?" And I said, "Sure, you bet, Bob." And they said, "Well, you're single. You live out of a suitcase. You want to move to Daytona and live on the beach?" Gee whiz, that was a tough decision. And at that meeting, Wendy Lancaster showed up with Bob Chain. And that was the second most successful Sam's we'd had in a long time. Joel Simon was the general manager. Joel had been an old Walmart guy. And they said, "Why don't you come to Bentonville and help us write the manual on how to open Sam's Club?" We only had like 75 or 80 back then.
Right.
And I said, "Sure." Couldn't even find Bentonville on a map.
Right.
Of course, we had no XNA. We only had to fly into Drake, into the Bowl.
Right.
And so flew up here on March 22nd of 1990. On March 23rd, which was a Monday of 1990, I met my wife, Sam Walton, in my career. Never looked back.
Wow, that's
Michelle
exciting.
was working as a receptionist at the home office, and she had helped set up my travel.
Yeah.
And that was great. Fell in love with her, became husband of her for 3+ decades. Still am.
Good.
But meeting Mr. Sam, and he was really intrigued. His comment when he came in was, "Well, my name's on the wall. I want to see what you guys are doing."
Wow.
And we were like, "Well, Mr. Sam, we're just writing a manual on some of the basics, the standards of how do we standardize a grand opening." We were going so fast, as you and I have spoken about.
Right.
40, 50 a year, Sam's Clubs.
Right.
We couldn't hire enough people.
Right.
And so we wanted it to be standardized. And so that led to a process. We were traveling all over America, opening Sam's Clubs, doing the management, doing the training, bringing on the people. And at the same time, trying to keep the culture alive. And it's a challenge, as you know.
Right.
The further you get out from what we would lovingly refer to as the bubble,
Right.
it gets harder and harder. You get to Miami or Washington State or Maine or California, it's hard to be a Midwesterner
Right.
and to instill Midwestern values that Sam and Helen started this company on. So fast forward, I went through my career, 16 years at Sam's and Walmart, spent 9 more years in Asia sourcing for Walmart and Sam's with a large broker. And then got into CHEP. CHEP, the blue pallets, as everybody knows, one of the largest pallet companies in the world. And I fell in love again with supply chain. I had been a buyer. I had done sourcing before, but I had never really gotten into the nuts and bolts of the supply chain. How do I move something from a Chinese factory to 100, store 100? How do I do that?
Right.
That's when I fell in love with supply chain.
Right.
And that brings us to today. I came on board with RJW. Actually, it's an interesting story how I came on board. Chris Saltemeyer.
Yeah,
Who
sure.
was the EVP
Great
of
guy.
Walmart.
Yes, great friend.
A fantastic guy and a big supporter of many, many people, reached out to me in February of last year and said that, "Hey, we've got some things going on at RJW. You might be an asset. Don't know. You want to talk about it?" We met and decided it would be a good match. I got to work with Greg Forbes, who unfortunately we lost to cancer last summer.
I know, yeah.
That was a horrible tragedy.
Absolutely.
Greg was just salt of the earth, good man.
Absolutely.
So it was a blessing. I got to come in, take over a little bit of what Greg was doing, and go after other retailers, all focused on this middle mile, which is how we get to today.
Okay.
And how RJW has become so successful, not being the manufacturer, not being the last mile, but how do they consolidate goods for some of the largest CPGs down to small regional CPGs to get them to the Walmarts and the Krogers and the Sams of the world. That's why we're here talking about it.
That's right. Wow. Well, first of all, congratulations on your career.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. And thank you for everything you've done at Sam's Club at Walmart. And when we get towards the end of the podcast, we're going to come back and talk a bit about that career, but we're going to share some things that Bill and I are going to be working on that you'll be very interested in. So just hang with us. Yeah. But Bill, I really, first, again, thank you for being here. And I really want you to explore for our listeners and for our audience and guests, this middle mile, because it's somewhat overlooked at times around this topic of omnichannel. Yes. And, as all of you know, we're all working for the customer. That's right. And the omnichannel experience for that customer, it's got to be seamless. And as you know, the closest store is in your purse or pocket, call your phone.
Yes, it is.
And so we're going to get into that. So Bill, why don't we just jump into this middle mile, explain that process, go through it with us, because, our listeners are Walmart and Sam suppliers, or they're retailers, or they're other suppliers to other retailers. So it's very, very broad.
Yes.
And I know that they're focused on omnichannel. So talk to us about it.
First disclaimer I want to make is that RJW is not the only consolidator, not the only middle mile operator by any means.
Correct.
We have very good competitors, and most of the listeners and viewers today will know who we're talking about. But in the case of RJW, about 10 or 11 years ago, our CEO, Kevin Williamson, decided he wanted to focus on retail consolidation. His family had started this business over 40 years ago, very successful. Ron and Jean Williamson, RJW, his parents. And he decided he wanted to focus on one thing, be the best consolidator in the United States. And what's so incredible, Andy, is that unlike many of the people you and I have dealt with for decades, his very first partner was Walmart. He didn't start with their little regional grocer and work his way up. He wasn't like most of the CPGs that have to prove themselves at a small chain, small sales, get it right. He went right to Walmart, and it worked. They saw his commitment. They saw his level of execution. Our OTIF being at 98, 99% of the time, on time in full. Everything was working so well, they decided to throw their hat in with him, and it worked. So this middle mile is basically where we're taking the mid-size manufacturers. We have very large manufacturers, including the top manufacturer. But for the most part, we're talking to the middle-size company. They're not going to ship a full truckload to 42 or 43 Walmart DCs every week. Okay? So now you've got this level of supply chain that we can reduce. We're going to bring it to one consolidation point, in our case, Chicago or Dallas. Once it's in this consolidation warehouse and those orders come in, we get a mirror purchase order at the same time. So when Walmart sends a purchase order to XYZ company, we get the purchase order at the same time. We then begin building that purchase order, and we're going to fill a truck. And this is where the differentiation happens. If you manufacture a product today, it's called a candle, Andy's Candles, and you're going to ship a pallet of Andy's Candles from Bentonville, Arkansas to California, you're going to pay in a ballpark range of $140 to $150 for a single pallet to go on a truck that's going to pick it up from your place and ship it to Anaheim. Right, $150. But if you can ship that to a consolidator, any consolidator, they're going to put it into a full truckload, and now they're going to charge you less than $100. So all of a sudden, the cost of moving that product has gone down, not only to the manufacturer, but now to the retailer, who should pass it on to the customer. Okay? As a consolidator, we also are reviewing the orders every single day. So I don't have to wait till every Monday or every Tuesday or every Wednesday, expanding that time on the shelf where your product may run out. If you put in another order on Thursday and the following Monday and the following Thursday, I can keep filling those orders so that you are not going to run out. We have an on-shelf availability execution that's off the charts, Andy. So the middle mile is more flexible. It's more nimble. I can fill a full truckload. I'm not sending LTL. Walmart doesn't want to receive 22 trucks and take off one pallet,
Right.
which is a typical truckload, about 22 pallets. Why would I want to take off 22 different trucks and have to unload them, and trucks and truck drivers and people and lumpers or whatever? We don't want to do that. Let's have one truck bring in multiple vendors and reduce that LTL cost. That's the genius of the middle mile.
Right.
And for omni-channel, it works so perfectly because most of the omni-channel people are not shipping full pallets. They're shipping cases.
Right.
We can also do case packs on a pallet.
Right.
And our customers only pay for the percentage of their case on that pallet.
Okay.
It's just amazing, the efficiencies. And we're so, I would go so far as to say, bold and proud of this process that we actually tell the retailers, you're going to be saving 20, 30% on your shipping costs.
Right.
You can get that back from the manufacturer
Right.
and pass the savings to the customer,
Right.
which is what we're all in business for.
Good.
So it's just a win-win-win atmosphere that the middle mile and the consolidation process gives us.
Right. Right. So
That's it in a nutshell.
well, so what you did, you described basically the middle mile versus the last mile. Basically, right? Now, if let's do this. So there'll be a lot of people listening to you today that are going to fall into that space of this middle mile, right? This consolidator. So how do they go about finding you? How do they go about learning about this? What advice would you give that potential customer?
I think, search engine optimization is very handy for all of us who are in the consolidation market. I think researching your consolidators. I think if you just look up consolidators, you look up middle mile operators,
Right.
you're going to see us and our competitors.
Right.
Again, I'm not going to say that the other people aren't any good. I don't
Sure.
do that. Competition's great, makes us all better.
Right.
But it's simply looking for a middle mile operator / consolidation. And when you do that, you would quickly see those who are at the top. And of course, we're proud to be one of the tops, but we do have good competitors and they're out there as well. But it's simple. And I think a lot of people, Andy, when I'm finding out what my job has been for the last couple of months, is I'm working with not only other retailers, but I'm also working with a lot of local brokers, national brokers and local brokers.
Right.
And we have a ton of those
Right.
people you and I have known for decades and are now out representing products. I'm working with the brokers who don't know that there's a solution to get a product. And so we're helping them be educated on consolidation as well.
Right.
And you'd be surprised that so many vendors are that middle size.
Right.
They're not full truckloads to 43 DCs every week.
Yeah.
They need somebody in between who can do the consolidation, and it saves them a lot of money, and they can wipe their hands clean of the supply chain and logistics and let us handle that.
Wow, that's huge. That's so what I hear you're saying, number one, it reduces cost.
Yes, it does.
And you went through that. Secondly, you can change quickly.
Yes.
Based upon the sales, right?
Yes.
You said they can change. They can ship more, ship less based upon their sales. Much better inventory management, right?
Yes. I think one thing that Kevin proved, and this is something that's been studied all the way to Harvard, is called a one node, NODE, a one node system. I did not understand the one node before I joined RJW. I'd heard about it, but I'd never had to deal with it before. Kevin proved to Walmart and the other large retailers we're now fortunate to have as partners that you can have all the products sitting in one giant area, one metro area, and ship it out from there. Now, could you do that from New Jersey? No. It wouldn't make sense to ship a product from Texas to New Jersey to go back to California.
Correct.
Could you do that in Montana? No. Be too far to go from Florida to Montana back to Georgia. But Chicago and Dallas are two perfectly aligned centric metro areas. You've got the highways that go east-west to Chicago. You've got 10 that goes east 20 that goes through Dallas. You've got 35 that connects to 2. So you've got different highway systems that are so perfectly aligned between Chicago and Dallas that we would only put our vendors in one of those 2.
Right.
Now you have one set of inventory versus having to have pallets and pallets in 42 or 43 sets of DCs.
Right.
It's amazing how that reduces costs, Andy, that I'm not, especially if you're Andy's Candles, you don't want to have to make 43 pallets just to keep the minimum on the shelf.
Right.
You can send us 10 and then produce as needed to keep up with the orders.
More competitive.
More competitive.
Right. It allows you as a company to be much more competitive.
Yes.
And we know that's important.
Yes.
You have done an excellent job simplifying this middle mile process, Bill, and I'm not surprised because you do that. So for I want to get to another topic with you, but I don't want to rush through this at all because this is very, very, very critical. Any summary or anything you want under the middle mile that you would like to talk about? Because I want to make sure we get all the information out.
Yeah, there is. And I think what I would want our friends who are suppliers, let's start with them.
Okay.
I would want our supplier friends to understand when they do their research, make sure you're talking to a consolidator / middle mile operator who owns their own assets.
Gotcha.
I can't say that enough, Andy. Kevin Williamson and his family started buying warehouses, started buying their own trucks, their own trailers. They hire their own people. Here's another genius story about being in the greater Chicagoland area for over 40 years. And now Dallas. We just started in Dallas. But let's stick with Chicago for a minute. One of the genius areas of having 10 warehouses, over 6 million square feet in Chicago, is that if I needed to shift labor, because now all of a sudden I've got a flurry of orders coming in over here for product XYZ, but this warehouse is a little slow, I move the inventory across the street. Or I move the people across the street. I move the labor across the street. I'm not having to go from state to state or from region to region. We're talking a couple miles.
Right.
And that was another genius move that the Williamson family had, is that they were asset owned. Let's go a step further. You have your own trucks, your own trailers, your own people. Now, Kevin took it to the next level and started his own technology. Our suppliers, unlike most of our competitors, can see where their item is live 24 hours a day.
Right.
If I have a pallet of 57 widgets, they pick it off, they pick 3 off, they pick 4 off, they pick 10 off. They're building these orders to go to different stores, different DCs, okay? We're stopping after every single pick, and we count back the whole pallet. Now, I'll just say this. We had an executive from one of the largest grocers in the world come in Chicago, and he'd been in the industry for over 30 years, about as long as you and I have. And he said, Bill, I have never in my 30 years physically watched people, and he was watching around the corner. He got so goofy, he was like, Bill, let's stop here and look around the corner. I want to see if they're really doing this. And they were. It's part of the culture for RJW. They count back. That's how we don't have misinventory counts. But all of this was going up into a technology field that the vendor could then look up and say, okay, I see you picked 3 for that. That's allocated. 7 for there. That's allocated. So I should have 57 left.
Right.
Now there's 10. Now there's 20. Now there's 30. And they can see that all the time. That improves their ability to fill more orders, to give us back stock and safety stock.
Right.
There's a technology level now to RJW and some others, but I'm talking specifically at RJW, that sets us apart. And I would encourage the suppliers out there, make sure whoever you deal with, and there are other good people, but make sure whoever you deal with can tell you those types of things, can give you that clarity and that security. Where is your product right now? Okay, let's take technology one more step. We now have an executive on our team who worked 23 years at Walmart. Awesome lady. She specialized in SQEP, which is compliance, standards, shipping standards, etc. We're now able to take her knowledge and share that with our vendors. And the vendors are saying, I got a fine for a bad pallet. I got a fine because I didn't have 2 labels on both sides of the box, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Guess what? With our technology, we can help make sure those are done on our loading dock before they ever leave.
Wow.
The fines are coming down.
Yeah.
The in-stock's going up. The performance is going up.
Right.
And our OTIF continues to be at the 98.5, 99 points.
Right.
It's unheard of in the industry, Andy. Most people are happy to be in the 80s, struggling to get to 90.
Right.
We're not happy. We will not be satisfied unless we're in the almost to the top.
Good.
We'd like to hit that 99 number. That's a comfort level for us. Anything less, we are not happy.
Good.
And unfortunately, some of our competitors are. So you just have to know who you're dealing with. You have to know that they can provide that, give you that security and that clarity. Then you know you're working with somebody who's going to help you in the middle mile.
Great. Well, Bill, we're going to make sure that our audience and guests will make sure that they know how to find your company.
Sure.
We want them to know how to find you, if that's okay.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
so
Yes,
we will post the website. We will post Bill's contact, and I know Bill will be glad to direct you.
Absolutely.
But Bill, this is so good. You know, one of the things that makes you so good at this, you understand the retail side and the customer side.
Yes, sir.
And you understand that product. It goes from manufacturer through the distribution system to the store, club, wherever, ultimately into that consumer's hands.
That's right.
And you understand that.
Yes, sir.
And that's why you did such a fine job. It's wonderful.
You know, I think I know I got this from Sam, Andy. Having come out of college and working with the greatest mind in retail maybe in the history of man,
Right.
what a blessing.
Yeah.
I've only met a few people who ever worked in the White House, and they said that's the pinnacle of their career. No matter what they did before or after, working in the White House was the pinnacle. That's what I say about Sam.
Yeah.
I only worked with Sam for a year and a half. I would say most of 90, some part of 91. Of course, we lost him in April 92. But that's the pinnacle.
Yeah.
And I learned so much from him in conversations over dinner, walking a store, walking a competitor store
Right.
were my favorites.
Always. Yeah.
The way he could find, I tell people, and I won't get into it now, but the things that he found were just mind-blowing that you and I wouldn't even have thought of.
Right.
So I go back to his whole premise every morning, as you know, was how do I make things better? I want to make one thing better today. And it was always with the goal of how do I get it to the customer cheaper, better,
Right.
et cetera, et cetera. And
Good.
that was what, it was so infectious that any of us that had the blessing to be with him, that's now in our blood.
Yes.
And so we get to pass that along as the customer is our boss.
Right.
They can fire us at any time. And if you don't know that, if you don't know that every day, Andy, as you and I do, then you're going to be in sad shape.
Yeah. Well, Bill, I'm so glad you talked to us about the middle mile. But we have more to talk about
Yes, sir.
with our guests, and I'll ask our guests to hang with us because, Bill and I are going to announce today something that we're going to begin on doing business in Bentonville, and that's a servant leader podcast. And servant leadership is so important, and you're going to hear a lot more about it. Bill and I are going to we're going to launch this together, but I want. Bill and I spent some time together, of course, prior to this.
Yeah.
But Bill, you and I had a privilege to do something great, and that's work for a great company.
Yes.
And it's not a perfect company, but it's a great company.
Good.
But we had the opportunity, though, to be mentored and led by some great leaders. And for me, I grew up at Walmart, and it was I learned so much. And so Bill, I want you to share a story. I don't know what you're going to share, and that's not over. But I'm going to ask Bill to share a story. It could be about Sam Walton. I'm not for sure, but servant leadership. And you'll be hearing a lot about servant leadership podcast. It's part of doing business in Bentonville. Of course, as you know, we're focused on omni-channel, but it correlates into servant leadership. So, Bill, I'm going to ask you, my friend, to close us out today with a story on servant leadership. So I'm going to turn it over to you. But let me just tell you, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Okay.
I've really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to do many more of these with
Absolutely. You will, my friend.
Good. Thank you,
Okay,
Andy.
go ahead.
You know, you and I have talked, like you said, a couple of times about servant leadership and how important it was to us every day. And not only to the customer, but more importantly, in our immediate world, how did our team see servant leadership? How did we lead? How were we led, et cetera? How did we mentor? How were we mentored? And so servant leadership meant so much to me because I saw it in action very early on. I'll give you 2 examples today because, and I have a ton on Sam.
Sure.
You and I have laughed and smiled our way through lots of Sam stories.
Right.
And I can't wait to share those with our audience, but I'm going to hold that in suspense.
Perfect.
But 2 stories I want to talk about.
Okay.
When I got hired, my very first day at Sam's Club, a couple from Longview, Texas, Lon and Melissa Campbell, had moved from Texas in their cowboy boots, their pearl button shirts, their jeans, big belt buckles, to Lantana, Florida. It's 50 miles north of Miami. First Sam's Club we had in South Florida. The only one we had were in Orlando at that time. So this was the first extension right off of I-95.
Right.
And they came down and they were in a little un-air-conditioned metal box hiring people.
Yeah.
I think I was associate number 2 to get hired there. And I'll never forget when I asked them, why had you come to South Florida? Why have you left your home? They had lived in Longview all their lives. I said, why'd you come here? We believe in this company and we want to help others see the vision. Wow. We want to share the savings of a membership warehouse. And we were chosen to come to South Florida, which to them was Mars. I mean, if you know, in the 80s, this is 89 now.
Yeah.
Sam's had only been going since 83.
Right.
We had mostly only gone into Texas and Oklahoma, maybe Louisiana. We were trickling across the Southeast. But to be near Miami, that was Mars to Walmart. There were no Walmarts, by the way, in South Florida.
Right.
So it's a great example of how people stepped out because they believed so much in the goodness of the membership warehouse, the people, the culture. They wanted to share that with us. I was in head over heels, and I knew this was a company I could believe in. Fast forward a couple months later, I'm in Bentonville. We're writing the manual in March of 1990 on how to open a Sam's Club with a standardized process. Didn't exist at the time. And Al Johnson became my next mentor. And Al at that time was leading Sam's Club. And I got to fly with Al many times on the old Commanders.
Oh yeah.
And he took me to Houston, Texas, and a couple other places all over America. We went for grand openings and to do site visits, whatever it was we were doing. But you know what's so fascinating about Al, and anybody who hears this is now will remember, or giggle, laugh, and smile. He had a desk in the middle of all of us with no walls. In our little Sam's home office, which is still over there, I think it's 608 Southwest 8th Street, I think is the address.
Sounds right. Yeah.
Al put his desk right in the middle of this giant room where all the buyers and the merchants and everybody sat. He had no walls. He was just there with us. He was accessible 6 in the morning to 6 at night. Now, he still smoked his cigarettes mostly at his desk. I'll never forget that either. But he was accessible. And that was, to me, a servant leadership. He didn't get behind a wall and shut himself off.
Right.
We didn't have reserved parking back then, Andy. You wanted to get to work early and have a good spot. You got there earlier than the next guy.
Yeah.
And it was just a leadership style that has stuck with me ever since. You want to get further in the company, you got to work harder. You want to be out accessible to the people, tear down the walls. It was just a method of leadership that I had, you hear about all the big fancy corner offices and all the stuff.
Right.
Not here.
Right.
And that's how Sam's and Walmart were being led, by people who were accessible.
Yeah.
They were open to people. They listened to people. What did Sam always say? Sam always said the greatest ideas came from the people.
Absolutely.
And you go back to the people greeter stories and all the other stories you and I know about that came from him being in the field, learning from the people.
Right.
That, to me, is servant leadership. And that's just a small encapsulation of many stories you and I have that we can talk about Sam and many of the leaders who we saw in our time do good things. And we probably also need to share some things that didn't work.
Absolutely.
But I am excited to share what I saw. And it's important for today's generation who didn't have those icons of leadership.
Right.
And we want to share that with them.
Absolutely. We do.
Let them see those visions.
Well, we definitely will, Bill.
Excellent.
And we are, and you'll hear, like I said, you'll hear much more about servant leadership coming up and our podcast. Bill, thank you for being here. Thank you for, like I said earlier, all that you've done for Walmart. And then, Bill, on RJW, it sounds like a wonderful company. It sounds like a company that our viewers can trust.
Yes.
A company that they can get information from to help them run their business more efficiently and effectively.
Yes, sir.
And ultimately serve the customer. So thank you for sharing all of that. We'll make sure that people will know how to find you and contact you. My friend, I can't wait to the next episode.
Yes, sir.
And when we talk about servant leadership and talk about not only just Sam Walton, but so many leaders that has impacted our lives. And I can't wait to share. We can't wait to share with you. Bill, thank you for being here today. And thank you, our guests, for listening to us. You can find us on dbbnwa.com. And not only will we have our podcast there, but we will have so many other articles around omnichannel, supply chain, and soon leadership. The other thing that you can find our podcast on is Spotify, Apple, or your favorite streaming channel. So find us there. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We really appreciate you, Bill. Thank you again, my friend. I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Let's go get on a bike and ride.
Let's do it. Okay. Goodbye. Thank you.